Hi there, welcome to our latest episode in our series of the Procurement Power Play, Maximising Value in 15 minutes. This time around, we're going to be discussing specifications, their importance and value, the different types available, and finally the risks associated when a specification is developed which is not fit for the intended procurement need. Today, and within the general business environment, specifications are crucial across various fields, used to ensure that products and services meet certain quality and performance criteria, ultimately used to facilitate trade and cooperation between buying and supplying organisations. It's a fair assumption to make that for every product or service we see in today's environment, from basic everyday commodities, leading technological solutions, to state-of-the-art complex construction projects, all of which would have started out as a specification in some shape or form. In fact, if you consider the commonly recognised procurement cycle, which is covered within the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply Qualification, where the journey of a specification starts right at step one in understanding the need, where naturally conversation around the planning and scoping of said need commences. From a procurement perspective, specifications are often coined as the heart of the contract. When you stop and think about that, from a procurement perspective, that makes perfect sense. The specification forms an essential part of a tender or quotation document, regardless of the sector a buying organisation operates within. This is oftentimes the final opportunity that a buying organisation has to portray its needs and requirements to the marketplace as part of a formal procurement exercise. Plainly speaking, a contract formed when one party makes an offer and the other party accepts that offer unconditionally. Now, in the world of procurement, that offer is in essence the specification. One could argue that a specification is in fact equal, if not of more importance than the terms and conditions the contract itself in which is underpinned. In short, without a specification, there is no terms and conditions. Without the terms and conditions, there's no contract. We can always point to the fact that there doesn't have to be a contract in writing. And whilst from both a procurement and business perspective, that's not advisable for a variety of obvious reasons. That, of course, is a discussion for another Power Play episode. If you take the term and approach of the invitation to tender, it is therefore an invitation to treat, and as such, the specification forms part of an offer to buy or procure. If a supplier accepts that, then it is contractually bound to fulfill the specification in full or within any tolerances that in fact happen to be specified within that document. Without getting too much into legal aspects, here in the UK, contract law provides goods and services supplied must conform to the specification provided, and that those goods supplied, or services in fact, must be of satisfactory quality and of course fit for their intended purpose. That fitness for purpose should clearly be defined within the specification. Effective specifications of course remove doubt, ambiguity and misunderstandings in suppliers' mind as to what in fact is required and therefore what constitutes a satisfactory quality and fitness for purpose. Before we get into the common types of approaches of specifications, it's probably worth us having a quick catch-up. Fundamentally, we have specifications within tender and quotation documents in order to define and communicate the requirement, to provide a means of evaluating the quality or conformance of the goods or services to be supplied. Let's go back to basics for a moment. Specifications can be written for any requirement imaginable. Oftentimes, however, the approach or type will depend upon how much you as a buying organisation know about the subject matter that is about to be procured, and whether that be based on in-house knowledge, information gleaned from marketplace itself, or any other source point. Starting off with a conformance specification. Now that really isn't as sinister as it sounds. In this approach, the buying organization details exactly what the required product, part, or material must consist of. This could take the form of many styles, whether that be, for example, an engineering drawing or blueprint, a chemical formula or recipe of ingredients, or in fact, a sample provided of the product to be subsequently duplicated. In this instance, it is the task of the market and suppliers within it to simply conform to the specification and the details provided within. In today's business environment, where buying organizations and consumers alike seek innovation and diversification, you can imagine that these types of specifications are becoming somewhat of a rarer occurrence. As myself and Fleur have discussed previously within our podcasts, with the advent of the Procurement Act here in the UK, public procuring organisations are actively encouraged to engage with the marketplace to ascertain not only existing market capabilities, but also what the future looks like in terms of possible solutions. Now, Flo and I have come across some incredible procurement professionals over the years, but none of which have access to a crystal ball. And so for that very reason, the use of performance specifications are on the increase. In this approach, buying organisations, as an example, describe what it expects as part or a material to be able to be achieved, or what outputs or outcomes it expects to be delivered by a service delivery. In so many situations here, the buying organisations know what the end goal looks like, but is unsure as to how to get there. As a result, it's up to the supplier to reach that proverbial goal by outlining and subsequently delivering a product or service that will satisfy the requirements set out within the performance specification. Routes to market, comparing the use of conformance specifications to that of a performance one, will vary, with the latter being more aligned to early market engagement and perhaps active dialogue through what could feasibly be a multi-stage procurement exercise. So then, now that we've got a better understanding of specifications, their types and approaches, it's probably worth considering the advantages and disadvantages in relation to their use and value. Overall, the process of drawing up a specification is a useful discipline. However, it's worth caveating this by saying that we as procurement professionals should never own a specification, as the majority of time it is not us that have identified the need. It will be the function, department, or the client who have approached procurement with the requirement in the first place. From a procurement perspective, our role is to ensure safe, compliant process through the tender or quotation exercise, whilst at the same time seeking to generate optimum and competitive environment for the opportunity. Other advantages around the use of specifications are that they can be used as a benchmark to act as useful criteria for measuring quality and acceptability of the purchasing outcomes once delivered. In addition, and perhaps more crucial to anything mentioned up to this point, specifications provide evidence in the event of a dispute as to what was agreed in terms of the deliverables as part of the contract. So with all these advantages and plus points in relation to the use of specifications, it's hard to imagine there will be any disadvantages. Well, kind of. However, the disadvantages I'm about to share with you all have one thing in common. It's not the use of specifications that is the issue. It's the content contained within them. Dependent upon the need in question, the production of a detailed specification can be an expensive and time-consuming process, especially in instances where the cost and time involved can be uneconomical when it comes to small value requirements. Another common pitfall is when it comes to specifications is down to the temptation to actually overspecify a requirement, therefore adding an increased cost without necessarily adding value. It's like specifying for a Ferrari when a Ford will be more sufficient. Not that there's anything wrong with Fords, I might add. A final disadvantage when it comes to specifications is one that is all too familiar to Fleur and I, and no doubt many of you watching this video, in that specifications can become far too firmly embedded, particularly in instances of longer term contract arrangements. Specifications are, of course, a snapshot in time, and one that is taken in many instances shortly after identifying the need. As a result, specifications and the content of which need to be reviewed regularly to ensure both the latest designs, approaches, and market developments are taken into account. Of course, this is much more tricky within the public sector. However, recent regulatory changes with the introduction of the Procurement Act have provided greater route to market flexibilities in this regard, actively encouraging innovation and procurement outcomes that are in fact future-proofed. There are a number of consequences attributed to both poorly defined specifications or in fact instances where there is no specification that is used at all. Misunderstandings with suppliers can lead to rejections, loss of production time, legal disputes, and ultimately damaged working relationships. Another consequence could be that it can result in misunderstandings with other stakeholders over requirements or their specifications, leading to internal conflict, resistance to use of the product or service, and loss of credibility for the purchasing function or departments. Finally, if specifications are poorly defined, but materials conform to what in fact has been detailed within the specification, then it is more likely that the buying organisations themselves will have to bear both the risk and cost associated with that particular consequence. In conclusion, we cannot get away from the fact that specifications play an important role within procurement and subsequent tender or quote activities that may follow. Furthermore, it is essential in a feature in ensuring prerequisite standards and solutions that meet the need are met or in fact exceeded over the life of the contract that will follow. As discussed earlier, it is not the responsibility of the procurement function or department to take ownership of the content and suitable assessment of the specification. However, procurement colleagues do have a role to play in challenging specification content from a practical sense and utilise suitable approaches to engage with the market to determine whether the need that is specified can actually be achieved. If done correctly, specifications provide a clear and detailed roadmap, ensuring that every product and service meets the standards required. By defining precise requirements, specifications can eliminate ambiguity, be a showcase for transparency, and enhance the quality of our procurement outcomes. That's it for this time. Let us know what you think, and in fact, what you'd like Fleur and I to cover in future episodes as part of the Procurement Power Play series. If you found this video of interest, of course, give it a like and subscribe to our channel, as it will help us continue to grow it and continue to produce content. And we'll see you on the next one.